Join with audio, of course. Hello, Lefty. Just left you. Okay.
Hello, radio.
Yep, I heard you. You sound good.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hi, Carol.
Do we have a camera?
Yeah, but oh, bad hair day.
Come on.
Just for a minute, if I can find it. I don't know. Maybe not.
At least then I can say it's good to see you again.
Yeah. I don't know if I can get it to work.
We'll get Dale on it.
Well, he's listening, but he's putting together a bookcase, so I don't think I better. Let's see. But good to see you, Carol. And this has been a very nice show. Very nice.
Good. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah. Very nice.
Well, hi, Dale, in the background.
I started this project and
Oh yeah, you don't want to take him off of it, definitely.
yeah, well, he's going to listen though, and I'm going to for sure. But I can't. That's okay. I just did the first day cover virtual meeting. That was a very nice meeting.
Yeah, I was in another one. Otherwise, I would have attended that one.
Learned some things. Yeah.
I'll drop in on their hospitality room later.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not too good. Oh, I see you again. I don't. Oh, and there's Keith. Hi, Keith.
There. You know, I really like the hotel this year that we have. I mean, the continental breakfast was so good.
Yeah, done a nice job with this.
And a refrigerator full of Corona beer. Can't get much better than that.
You don't have to spend all the night, the room, the money on the room.
Yeah, no kidding. That was always the hardest, is the room price.
Yeah.
Did you see the Volkswagen Beetle that had a Corona bottle on it as advertisements? It was the Corona bug.
Oh no, that's a cute idea. Yeah. Oh, let's see.
Okay.
Who's going to give this talk now? I'm looking here.
He's coming in. This is going to be Ravi Vora from Colorado.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there he is. He's on.
Yeah.
Yep. Hi. Good evening. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Ravi. We still got some more coming in. They're coming in.
Even better was the
Okay.
3 senoritas in the Corona bikinis. There you go.
Good imagination. I see my friend Paresh is joining us.
Mhm.
Okay. I was
Good
going to
morning.
say, he's not on my list. So, okay, he's one of yours. Got it.
Yeah, right. I wasn't sure he was going to join. I think maybe he did say yes.
Is he in
So
India
Paresh, this is
or is he U.S.?
because he's my childhood friend, by the way.
So is he in India then?
No, he's in Seattle. He's in.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, he's in your neighborhood.
Oh, good. Edie, there you are. We see you.
I know. Bad hair.
It's been a long time.
Are you also in Seattle?
We're in
Yeah.
Salt Lake Terrace, just a little bit north of Seattle.
Well, I'm in Mukilteo.
Oh, wow. Okay, you are north of us by about 10,
Right.
15 minutes, depends, 5 minutes as the crow flies.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, the
I'm
way-
in Eugene.
Yes,
you
I know
are.
you
Oregon.
are. I see you did. Yeah.
We're near San Francisco.
Paresh, if you know
Oh, you
the
do.
I-5 corridor, we're exactly halfway between Seattle and Everett.
Oh, you
Oh,
are.
wow.
Oh,
Okay, Eric.
I hope you're safe from the fire.
Well, we're
Forest.
safe from this fire, but it's real smoky. The lights are on, it's dark in the house, and it's real smoky, like a heavy winter fall, foggy day. But
Right.
it stinks pretty bad out there. I haven't been out, but a lot of people are complaining about the smell.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Well, I went out about an hour ago to go to the post office and back again, and it's actually cold out there.
It is very cold, I agree.
Really?
The
Ooh.
Well, it's
smoke
probably
is
the
blocking the
dampness.
sun.
Well, there
Yeah.
is no sun, that's for sure.
Yeah.
that's our smoke in Eugene.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Oh.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it looks like about here. Except
Well,
a
if
little
we
bit
get
further.
rain, it will help with the forest fires, right? That's what happened. We had snow
Go now, Dale.
The
earlier
rain's
this
not
week.
supposed to hit until, Keith, what'd they say? Rains Tuesday?
Monday, Tuesday, something like that.
Yeah.
But
I think it's-
unfortunately, everything is so dry
Yeah.
that the little bit of rain is not going to help.
Yeah,
It's gotta,
absolutely.
well, it's gonna be 4 days of rain. Now, is it gonna be sprinkle or a good rain? We don't know.
Well, I'm in Colorado,
Mhm.
near Golden, and this past week we had over 6 inches of snow
6
in the
inches.
foothills.
Hey.
Oh my gosh.
And in the mountains, it was probably closer to 12 to 15 inches of snow. So it did help number of forest fires to
Yeah.
get
This thing?
under better control.
Okay. Oh, okay.
It was probably one of the coldest summer we've had at least since I moved here 5 years ago.
Oh, really? Mm.
So
Yeah.
the reservoirs for the Coors Brewery will have plenty of water for the beer. There you go.
Oh yeah, we live right next to another private lake. We have lots of private lakes in this area. So you're right. And we have a lot of wildlife too in our area. So Carol, I'm gonna probably have to ask for your help to make sure I get this right, but we'll hopefully make it work whenever you're
Okay.
ready.
Okay. Well, we've got 23 signed up and we're not quite, I guess we got half here.
How
So,
many are there?
23.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I just gave you permission to share. So when you're ready to share, you're ready for that. For those of you who are here already, we are recording this so that we can put it up on the presentation on the website later for those who have missed it. So if you have an issue with recording, we can turn it off. All right, so that's okay, William Etter, so I can check him off.
Well, the
It would
easiest thing to do is, if they don't want to be recorded, is to turn off their video and mute their mic.
Yep.
Okay, I'll be the mute. Okay, that's him.
Liz, according to this, we have 12 participants, right, Carol?
We have 20, well, right now we have 12.
Yeah, that's
But
what
there's
I-
23 signed up.
Right.
So,
So I think we probably should, if you think
go
it's
ahead
okay,
and
let's start.
okay.
So before I try to bring the presentation on the screen, I just want to give you a little bit of background.
Suggest
Because
having the host mute all the mics except for the presenter so we don't get a lot of background noise and the presenter gets interrupted by mistake.
Yes, I apologize for my cat. He's quite needy, so we will mute. And everybody can mute themselves. Paresh, if you would like to mute yourself, William. Okay. Yeah. Or Bill, I say, Evan, you're still not muted yet.
And just for the clarification, whenever someone wants to ask question, they can unmute.
Right. If anybody wants to ask a question while Ravi is doing the presentation, just unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on the chat. And let's see, anything else? We got some more coming. Oops. There we go. All right. Okay, good. Everybody's muted. All right. I'm Carol Edholm, president of CPEX. Welcome to CPEX Virtual Stamp Show 2020. And you are going to you are sitting in the meeting with the Versailles Peace Treaty, the role of diplomatic and military mail. It will be presented by Ravi Vora out of Colorado. And Ravi, I'm going to mute myself and it's all yours.
Thank you, Carol. So before I start try to get on the screen, I'm not very computer savvy like many of you. So if I have trouble, I'll ask for Carol's help. But just want to give you a little bit of background. So this presentation I'm doing is really a result of my 30 plus years of interest in U.S. State Department history and related consular diplomatic postal history that I've been working on for more than 30 years. And a little over 2 years ago, I was invited by the Smithsonian Postal History Symposium because that was year before the centennial of the Versailles Peace Treaty. So they thought that this would make a good topic at the Smithsonian. So what you're gonna see is really 16 double page exhibit pages on this story of the role of the U.S. diplomatic and military postal history in the Versailles Peace Treaty. And it is unconventional in the sense that unlike most philatelic exhibit, you will see lots of writings or verbiage and very few philatelic items actually, because this is really synthesizing the postal history envelopes with the letters and other related documents. So with that, I'm gonna try to do this and see if it works. Okay, let's see. All right, can you all see the, I apologize for this being very small screen, but we're gonna try to highlight in terms of my comments on the left and right of each double-sized page. So the first left side of the first page is really an introduction, and what it is really it's a history of the role of the U.S. In engagement in the World War I, as well as Armistice Treaty, which ended the war, leading to the Versailles Peace Treaty negotiations in 1919. And this story is really the result of a Colonel House. You will see Colonel House name all over this story. He was a special advisor to President Wilson before the World War I and throughout the Versailles Peace Treaty. And he was present, not only that, he was effectively the head of the US delegation at the Versailles Peace Treaty, which was unconventional because traditionally the Secretary of State, who represents the US government on foreign affairs, would normally lead the delegation. But because Colonel House was so close to Wilson, he was effectively the head of the US delegation. What you see, the scope of this presentation is really shows all the delivery methods of the mail by the US, the British and the French officials. We will talk a little bit about the pre-armistice treaty. And then of course the activities from the armistice treaty to Versailles Peace Treaty. And then right after the treaty was signed, the formation of the League of Nations. I know the color picture which shows the signing of the treaty is very, very small. When you get your version, you'll be able to see it better. But because I have my close personal friend from India, I have a little bit of a quiz. If you look at carefully, there is one gentleman with a turban, and he is standing behind President Wilson to the right, as we look at it. So my question for those, and we'll give an answer toward the end, who was that uh, Indian, apparently in the military attire? Who was he? And by the way, he was the only Indian who signed the Versailles Peace Treaty from India. He was part of the British delegation. So one of the tidbits that most people don't know, and we can go into that a little bit later when I explain who he was. So we now move to the delivery methods of the mail. I should also specify before we go in all the details that this project could not have been done if I did not have the access and the cooperation of the Yale University's archives. Apparently, Colonel House's correspondence and documents were donated to Yale University, and the staff at their university library were amazingly helpful, and a research assistant I had hired to dig up the history behind each of the envelopes which I have in my collection. So the envelopes you see in this exhibit belong to my collection or my exhibit. The letters you will see in these pages are actually the photocopies from Yale University, because they really tell the story what was happening. So with that background, the very first second page on the right is a letter from a French ambassador in 1918 in August to Colonel House. He sent it through US Postal Service using special delivery. As a French ambassador, he did not have any free franking privileges. He had to pay postage like everybody else. But you would wonder, why would he send this letter by special delivery, which cost him 10 cents extra? Well, the letter tells the story. What it is that he and his wife in August had planned a visit to Martha's Vineyard area and for short weekend vacation. And at that time, Colonel House had a summer home in Magnolia, Massachusetts. And he wrote to Colonel House proposing that he and his wife would like to visit Colonel House and his wife at their summer resort. And sure enough, the US Postal Service delivered the letter to Colonel House within 24 hours. So that's a bit of a personal story there. And then you can see the receiving council of Magnolia and the seal of the French embassy, which I show in the bottom. We'll quickly move to now. US State Department played an important role. So they had a special pouch service. And so the page on the left shows an envelope from Department of State. It was sent by Secretary of State Paul Lansing. His signature is on the lower left. It's addressed to Miss Emma Lansing. It took me a while to figure out who Miss Emma Lansing, and then the cover below that is Miss K, with Catherine Lansing. Turns out Emma and Catherine were Secretary Lansing's sisters, and they volunteered with the American Red Cross to go to Paris in 1918 to help the Red Cross work in Paris, dealing with the wounded soldiers, refugees, and so forth. And so the top one is, because it was sent by special pouch, it did not require any stamp, did not go through US Postal Service, but it did require signature of the secretary. The second letter at the bottom you see was sent through, initially sent through US Postal Service, requiring 5-cent George Washington stamp. It was sent to the American Embassy, and then they use a special pouch service to deliver it to Miss Catherine Lansing. The letter on the right, the right page shows a picture postcard of Brad Whitlock, who was the head of the US delegation in Brussels, and with the officers of two Belgian military. They actually were the committee that managed Belgian food relief program, We'll talk a little bit more about it. It started in 1917 because in French and Belgian area, there was a huge amount of famine, and many millions of people were starving, and many hundreds of thousands may have died as a result. At that time, the future President Hoover was a very successful businessman based in London. And Hoover initiated the Belgium Food Relief Program, initially through private initiative, and eventually it was supported by the US government. So the cover you see below that is sent from Brad Whitlock of American Legation in Brussels, but it was sent in December 1916 when Brussels was under German occupation. And so it bears the stamps of the German occupation of Belgium. And it was not sent through the German occupied postal service because of the sensitivity, but it was sent through diplomatic pouch under Geneva Convention. The diplomats were allowed to have their mail sent in sealed pouches, circumventing the postal service. So it went through the pouch service, and when it was delivered in Washington, D.C. State Department, they deposited it in the U.S. Postal Service. So that's an interesting example of how Brad Whitlock was able to circumvent German censorship and so forth. Now we're going to deal with the delivery methods by the U.S. military. On the left side page, you see an envelope sent from a member of the American Commission to Negotiate Peace. That was the formal title of the American delegation that attended the Versailles Peace Treaty. On the right side, you see the picture of the American delegation at the Hotel Carillon in June 1919. And that just shows you how huge the American delegation was. There were literally more than 100 officials, army personnel, academic experts. And this picture was taken in Hotel Carillon, which is where Colonel House spent most of his time while he was there. On the bottom right corner, you see a cover from General John Pershing. Many of you probably recognize that name. He was the commander-in-chief of the American Expeditionary Forces, a very, very famous general. And he sent a letter to Colonel House in February 1919 at the beginning of the Versailles Peace Treaty negotiations and planning. He sent it via military courier. So even though it was within Versailles and Paris, it was handled by the American military couriers, and it was even censored. Even though he was the commander-in-chief, there were no exceptions about censorship, which shows you how the regulations and disciplines were.
Days for posting, only 50.
Sorry, was there a question? No, okay, maybe it was a background sound. So now we're gonna show you the delivery methods used by the British and by the French. On the left side page, you see an official mail sent in 1819 by Sir William Wiseman, who actually was a British foreign official, but he was really with MI5. And as we'll talk more, MI5 was very active, and actually MI5 actually helped the American military in establishing intelligence service because until World War I, US really did not have international intelligence service organization. And so there are some very interesting collaborations between the British officials and the US government at that time. This particular mail was sent to Colonel House when he was visiting the US Embassy in London. And he has the signature he had to sign at the lower left. And there's another letter at the bottom. We go to this page on the right, and there you see French Prime Minister Clemenceau. We'll talk more about French Prime Minister Clemenceau because he was the real force behind the way the Versailles Peace Treaty was structured, the terms and conditions, which are hugely enormous to the Germans. But this particular letter is in English to Colonel House, and he's sending some confidential document to Colonel House as requested by him through the through the American Embassy in Paris, which forwarded it through diplomatic pouch to Colonel House, who was then in Washington, D.C. So this is December 17th, much while the World War I is in full swing. The bottom right cover you see is from the French deputy chambers, and it was sent to Colonel House when he was staying at the Hotel Ritz, but they used the French military postal service to send that mail. We will now cover some of the roles of the U.S. State Department and also the American Expeditionary Forces. On the left page, you see an envelope that was sent from Frank Polk, who was a key member of the Inquiry Commission. At the beginning of the World War I, U.S. had no interest in getting engaged. And in fact, there was a significant opposition both within the President Wilson's team as well as the Congress to not get involved. And so then President Wilson, engaged a commission called the Inquiry, which he assigned Colonel House and Frank Polk to do a study on the causes of the World War I and strategies to prevent such world wars in the future. So this is a letter he sent to Colonel House by registered mail, and under the free franking rules, registered mails were not allowed, and it probably had some personal documents. So you see effectively 16 cents postage, which represented 6 cents for double weight letter and 10 cents for registered mail. The lower left is an envelope and a letter from General Pershing to Colonel House. This is in October 1918. He had just arrived in Paris to begin preparation for the Versailles Peace Treaty planning. And upon his arrival, General Pershing sent a letter, which is shown on the left of the envelope, inviting Colonel House to come to him for a personal briefing. And General Bliss, some of you may know General Bliss, he was a very famous general in World War I. So General Bliss accompanied Colonel House for a military briefing for Colonel House on his arrival in Paris. We're still dealing with the pre-armistice treaty, which took place on 11th November 1917. There are a couple of interesting things. So we are going to discuss what is on the top, both on an envelope and then some pictures. In 1917, Bolsheviks were becoming very, very effective and successful in St. Petersburg in Russia, to the point they called general strikes. They got a lot of supports through propaganda from the workers, from the farmers, some of the military, and they were becoming a significant force. In fact, they forced themselves into a coalition government, which was alarming because until then, the Russian government was primarily part of the Allied forces opposing Germans. So President Wilson created a commission and sent a special delegation to Russia in 1917, a diplomatic mission, to find out what was going on. He assigned Colonel House to organize this diplomatic mission, and former Secretary of State Roots was officially the leader of this delegation that went to Russia. And they spent about 3 months there. What you see on the right is a picture of the American delegation in St. Petersburg. And then the picture of the building you see is the American embassy at that time in St. Petersburg. So you're beginning to get a visualization of what was happening. The envelope is actually from a special diplomatic mission of the United States of America from Russia. It was sent bearing Russian stamp, 10 kopeck, but it was sent through diplomatic mail. It was sent by one of the members who was a friend of Colonel House, and he was actually a New York investment banker. And he asked this banker to give him, his name was Samuel Bertrand, and Samuel Bertrand wrote a 4-page detailed letters about their journey from US to Russia through Vladivostok by ship or a US Navy ship, and then by train. They were given red carpet treatment. The detailed letter really talks more about what they saw are challenges, the collapse of the Russian economy, and some of the crisis that was happening. And so that kind of gives you a sense of what President Wilson wanted to do is gauge the seriousness of the Bolsheviks in this new revolution. And his intent was to make sure the Russians and Bolsheviks did not join the Germans, or they did not withdraw from the Allied forces, which successfully happened. The bottom one is a letter from a junior US diplomat called Hugh Fraser. He writes in June of 1918 to Colonel House, and it was sent through Department of State diplomatic mail. And he reports on the agitations in Paris, the pacifist propaganda against the French fighting, and also planned French army offensive, which will test the French General Petain's effectiveness. But more importantly, he reported that the French naval forces were totally ineffective in patrolling the shores near Brest. That was the closest where the German ships and submarines would come. And so he was advocating that the US Navy should take over patrolling of the French coastal area. So this kind of gives you some insights which you would not normally get if we didn't have access to the letters. We'll go to the next page. So now we are dealing with the pre-armistice treaty and some of the initiatives by President Wilson, which I'll discuss on the left side. It's a letter from American Consul Brad Whitlock we talked about. But during this time, he escaped Brussels, and he was based in Havre in France. So that's why you see the envelope with a corner card of American legation Havre. Letter to Colonel House when he was in New York. The letter is one of the most amazing letter written in October 1918, which really, he was quite, shall we say, he thought very highly of President Wilson. He was a big fan of President Wilson. At that time, he had just received President Wilson's 4-point speech, where President Wilson laid out his vision about how the nations should conduct themselves. So in future, we don't have this type of, catastrophic wars. And he thought that was the best thing happened. And to further show his admiration, he had shared this letter with his chef, who was equally enamored with the President Wilson's vision. And he specifically repeats the French chef's vision that these 4 or 5 points of President Wilson are sort of like commandments, 10 commandments of the Lord. So that just shows you how President Wilson was quite popular, even though he was visionary with the American diplomatic forces. On the right, we see now we are getting to a point where in November 1918, the plans were afoot for President Wilson to come to Paris to attend Versailles Peace Treaty. That had some problems. But as the British government learned about this plan, Lord Derby, who was the British ambassador to France, sent a letter to Colonel House. The letter is copy is on the lower right in an envelope shown above with a signature of Derby. Basically, he conveys the King's invitation to President Wilson to come to visit UK when he comes to visit to attend Versailles Peace Treaty. Now we're going to talk about some of the nitty-gritty of what was happening. This is a letter from British Prime Minister Lloyd George, who was quite, quite a force along with his foreign secretary. And in this particular letter, written in 1917, he writes to Colonel House when the war planning was going afoot. There were a lot of problems and challenges, and he requested Colonel House to personally come to London to attend the Allied meeting on planning and preparation to defend. And sure enough, Colonel House did go to London to attend those Allied meetings. On the right, we see a letter from French Foreign Minister Pichon. There was an inter-Allied conference, a collaborative organization between various Allied countries on managing the imports necessary for the war efforts, particularly for the US, as well as the maritime transport. US provided a lot of ships for maritime transport, not only of the American troops, but also the Allied troops. So now we see some of the communication between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Colonel House, who was really the focal point for all the diplomats and military officers of the Allied countries to convey their desires and their interest. The page on the left is an interesting story. As President Wilson was planning to visit and attend the Versailles Peace Treaty, his initial hope was that he would actually lead the Allied nations negotiations at the Versailles against the Germans. However, the French, particularly the French Minister Clemenceau, was totally against it. He really did not want the show to be limelight to be taken away from him and the French initiatives, and he felt that it was not necessary for President Wilson to come, since he had a pretty good delegation at the Versailles Treaty. However, what turned out is that the British officials were very keen to have President Wilson join, and they actually reported through Colonel House how popular President Wilson was, and advocated with Clemenceau and the French government that you must allow and invite President Wilson to attend and join, because he's enormously popular with people, not only in UK, but all over Europe among Allied countries. So there was a compromise. The compromise was that that President Wilson can attend the Versailles Peace Treaty. However, he would attend as the head of the American delegation, and the French would continue to head the Allied delegation to negotiate with the Germans. The right side is more personal. It's a letter from Foreign Secretary Balfour, addressed to Colonel House. And it's a very evocative letter because this is written in December 1918, right in the midst of all the preparations. And he was simply communicating that he felt there was limitations and inadequacy on how much you can negotiate and discuss through letters and through telegraphic communication, and advocated personal visit for Colonel House to go during the Boxing Day. That's all of you who know England. Boxing Day is like our Christmas Day, but they call it Boxing Day.
Hey, Ravi,
Yes.
question for you. I'm looking at all these displays and particularly letters.
Mhm.
It seems like all the letters are condensed in a one page. Are they
Well,
really able to convey the meanings and everything else in a one page?
not really. It's a matter of
Or only
space.
showing only one page?
There were several letters that were more than one pages. For example, the letter that was sent by the American banker from St. Petersburg to Colonel House, the special mission to Russia, that was a 4-page letter. But when you're showing on presentations or exhibits, you just don't have enough space to put all the pages. So what we normally do, if you see there is a Q code at the top of each of the page. So if you were to click on that, you will get a reference to the further details, including the copies of the letters. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Ravi, I have a question too.
Sure.
On the previous page to this
Yeah.
one,
Okay.
where has the little symbol that was
Oh, yeah.
on the back, it would have been.
That was the seal of the British Foreign Office that was used to signify this was an official envelope.
So when it's this particular one, then it would have the seal,
Yep.
and it would say it was private, and it has his signature.
Yep.
Then does it go in the pouch or does it go in the mail?
No, none of these went through the mail. In
Okay,
fact, if
this
you
is-
look at the another envelope on the left side of this page, that has a corner card rubber stamp of British Embassy in Paris,
Right, okay.
right? And it says urgent. And by the way, the 355 you see at the bottom right, that's the room number where Colonel House stayed in that hotel.
Oh,
So those minor details I did not go through. One of the interesting tidbits about what made this project possible is that Colonel House was very, shall we say, methodical. Every envelope he received, he wrote down the date he received it and the person who wrote that envelope, letter in envelope. So that was the clue I had, because I only have the envelopes, not the letters there with the university archives. But the dates and the name on each of the envelope led us to do the research to find out the matching letters. So it was quite an effort. It took us more than 6 months to do the research.
at least, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So those are good questions. Thank you for your interest, Carol. So now we're going to get closer to the beginning of the negotiations. The envelope you see on the left, a big one from General Pershing to Colonel House, and a letter that you show a copy. This was written on 30th of December, 1918. Technically, General Pershing was taking some time off from his strenuous duties, but I think he was enjoying the hospitality of the French Field Marshal Foch, and they became quite close. And General Pershing was very meticulous and was almost like a lawyer in following the laws of the United States. Now, one of the laws of the United States is that when a war, the declaration that ends the war, the U.S. cannot hold their armed forces in the foreign territory for more than 90 days. All right. Now, when the Armistice Treaty was signed, U.S. had over 1 million soldiers, and many of them were in the French territory. So he was just simply laying out what the law required the U.S. to do and what the U.S. cannot do. He conveyed that to French Field Marshal Foch. French Field Marshal was quite alarmed, very upset. He could not see how the momentum to bringing peace can be maintained or retained if American forces were to depart within 3 months, because there's no way this would be settled in that short a time. So he was very, very upset. General Pershing realized that he may have created a diplomatic crisis. And so he reached out and wrote this lengthy letter to Colonel House saying, look, I screwed up. I would really appreciate if you intervene and assure the French government, the prime minister and the generals, that we will find a way to maintain armed forces presence. We may define it in a different manner and get the Congress to support it. But this is a very important letter about the transition for the U.S. Army from World War I to peace treaty. It was a very difficult transition, both from legal and operational point of view. Now, so with the treaty at active negotiations, one of the concerns General Pershing had was how does he keep all the troops, not only of the United States, but the Allied troops in the region, to be physically fit and active and not get bored or not get in trouble. Because he was very concerned and he was a very physically fit and athletic general, he organized what is called inter-Allied games. He promoted this huge game among inter-Allied troops to both create, shall we say, friendly competition, but also keep everybody physically fit. The US YMCA played a major role in funding and organizing. So what you see is a picture postcard of the Inter-Allied Games promoting, and it was actually mailed on the day the games were opened. It started on 22nd of June in 1919 and lasted till 6th of July. Now we get in the nitty about what was going on behind the scene. The letter on the left you see is from André Trudeau. He was a French commissioner, and that was some of his communications about the war cooperation in the region. And he was finally administering Alsace and Lorraine region, which originally it was controlled by Germans. The letter on the right you see is a letter, an envelope that was sent to Colonel House from British delegate Penhurst. It actually deals with, by this time, large number of Turkish POWs were under Austrian control, or Austrian Red Cross. And some of them are POWs were in Siberia under Allied control. And this letter basically lays out their plans for sending a delegation to visit the POWs to make sure they were properly managed, and to allow some of the POWs to return back after the surrender to the British military authorities from the Austrians. We are almost getting there. So now we're getting to the negotiations at the peace conference. The Belgians were very active. They're a small country, but they suffered quite a bit. The Belgian-French Foreign Secretary sought reparation, as did all the Allied countries who suffered enormously. But more importantly, he also tried to seek the seat of the League of Nations in Brussels. So this is a letter where he was advocating his position to Colonel House. The letter on the right is from the French former Prime Minister of Greece. I'm sorry, Greece former Prime Minister, who was the delegate sent by the Greek king to the Treaty Conference. And he very successfully advocated and negotiated the return of the Thrace and Smyrna territories from the Turkish Ottoman Empire. We are now on another mission to Montenegro. This particular one is from Foreign Secretary Balfour to Colonel House in April 1919. And it's about the visit of the Anglo-American mission to Montenegro and the coordination required between various officials from different countries. But their main reason was to quell a civil war between Montenegro and the Hungarians. And there was also concern about illegal arms supplies from Bolsheviks and the spread of communism in that area. The letter on the right is from the Montenegro's foreign minister. He was just miffed because they did not pay any attention to what Montenegro wanted to do, or they did not give them a significant role. So he was basically seeking greater role and greater influence through Colonel House. Romania actually was a very significant factor in this post-war period. For a while, the Romanian army tried to reclaim Hungarian territories, thinking because of the disarray they can get away with it. However, the British and American forces immediately put a stop and used the relief supplies that they were giving to Romanians as a leverage. So that's what the letter deals with on both on the left and the right side. Now we come to the conclusion of the signing of the peace treaty itself, which was signed on the 28th of June, 1919. French post office had a special post office at the Versailles Palace. So you see about 3 examples of mail canceled on the date of the Versailles Peace Treaty signed. The first one is a non-philatelic cover to Switzerland. It was still censored, even though it was sent from the Versailles Palace on the day of the treaty signing. The one on the right is a picture postcard showing the table where the signatures were signed by the Germans and the lead Allied officials. Now, this was sent by an American nurse who was present and saw the ceremony and sent this postcard on that day to one of our family friends. So it's one of the very nice personal use and not a philatelic one. The one on the bottom is a philatelic on the lower right corner. Last but not the least, so we are now coming to the Versailles Peace Treaty has been signed. The formation of League of Nations is in high spirits. U.S. led a major role in promoting League of Nations. So one of the American Assistant Secretary of State, William Phillips, who was somewhat kept out of the mainstream of these events, was somewhat disenchanted, but he was a nice guy. So he sent a long letter to Colonel House. Basically, he was promoting himself and requesting Colonel House that he should be considered to be the first head of the League of Nations. So that was a feeble attempt because even though U.S. was largely influential, they did not play a major role. And so he was definitely not chosen for that role. The letter on the top right basically is a letter that confirms that Brussels gave up the location of the headquarters of League of Nations from Brussels. And that was by Sir Cecil. And then what we see at the bottom is a letter. It's an old letter from Drummond. Drummond and Cecil were the 2 major officials working with their counterparts in drafting the Charter of League of Nations. And Drummond was made the first Secretary General of the League of Nations. As a closure, many of you may or may not know that even though President Wilson led the formation of League Nation, it was his vision U.S. Congress never ratified the American membership in League of Nations. And so that remains part of how our American democracy works. With that, I end our presentation and thank you for your interest. And if you have any more questions, happy to answer. Oh, we do have the quiz about the Indian gentleman in that picture. See if anyone has figured out who he is and why he is there. Any guesses? All right. So since there's silence, I guess no one wants to embarrass himself or herself. So that gentleman is actually Maharaja of Bikaner. It's a fairly small state. However, he was the most effective British Indian Army general that was brought on board because British Indian Army sent one of the largest troops to Europe even before Americans entered the war. And historians believe that had it not been for the large scale deployment of Indian troops, not only in Europe, the Mediterranean, North Africa, Middle East, it would have been harder, if not impossible, for the Allies to win over the Germans. So that is one reason why Maharaja of Bikaner was effectively representing the Indian contingent, and the British Foreign Secretary and Prime Minister enabled him to be the only Indian to sign the Versailles Peace Treaty.
Mm.
Well, they deserve that right. Definitely. Learn
Sorry?
something new. Wonderful. Thank you, Ravi. That's terrific.
Thank you.
Hey, Ravi, I have got a question for you.
Sure.
Really interesting presentation. Now, you mentioned that you have got these envelopes, the blank
Yep.
envelopes, but the letters are from different locations, libraries.
Yep.
Okay. So how did you happen to get only the blank envelopes with all this?
Sure. So my understanding is, and again, this is more a hypothesis, that when Colonel House passed away, his estate were more concerned about preserving the letters. They did not really care about the envelopes, which makes sense. So effectively, and I don't know the method in which they were dispersed in the market, but they did come out in the market through dealers or auctions or whichever way. And so the letters were retained by the Yale University. They had no interest in envelopes because they're not stamp collectors or postal history collectors. And so we were basically given the opportunity of what they didn't want. And that's how most of these came out through various auctions and dealers over a period of about 15 years.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good question.
I'm curious, Ravi, what made you get into studying this?
Well, as I mentioned, I have a pretty 40-year interest in U.S. State Department history. In fact, I have a 8 or 10 frame exhibit on the postal history of the U.S. Department of State, which has been shown in Washington, D.C., 2006, shown in Prague, shown in Apex, Westpex, and in Korea. Last time it was shown was in Korea, which is a much larger exhibit, about 96 pages.
Wow. Well,
And it covers, for your information, it covers from the time when Benjamin Franklin was sent as a U.S. Diplomat to the court of France, because I have an envelope sent to him by the Continental Congress president, and then it was on to the World War II. So it covers over 150 years.
you are the expert, and here you are at CPEX.
That's wonderful.
I don't know about expert.
Why
It's just
not?
yeah, why not? We have family roots in Seattle, as many of you know, and so we do come to Seattle before this crisis quite regularly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your interest, and happy to correspond or talk on the sideline if you wish. But hope this gives you a different perspective on what went behind the scene on how these treaties are negotiated.
Thank you, Ravi.
You all have a successful stamp show, and good luck with getting all the treasures from the dealers or fellow collectors, and enjoy it.
All right.
And
Thank
Paresh,
you.
thank you so much. It's a good way to stay indoors for many of you and stay away from the smoke.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.